dwarfs the previous 200 years before that. So we are on a huge ascent at breakneck speed, and it feels like we're going to crash into technological oblivion soon. But good question. Harsonet. Look, the Reconstructionist area was already going to die during Grant, and Grant gets a bad rap for that. States' rights was the only thing Hayes could do. Yeah, Hayes was kind of at the end of his rope. Grant's corruption, if Grant had just been a better judge of character, Reconstruction might have worked out. He did crush the Ku Klux Klan. He did get the 14th and 15th Amendment, or sorry, the 15th Amendment. He knew, which allowed blacks to vote. He knew what to do. He wanted reparations. He wanted the Freedmen's Bureau to reshape the Confederacy, the old Confederacy, into an egalitarian society. He wanted all of these things, but the political corruption of his cabinet allowed the Democrats to gain more political power in Congress, which limited Grant's effectiveness. His own scandals ruined his reputation, and of course the Democrats gaining in Congress made it really hard for him, and that's why he wanted to come back in 1880. He's one of the first presidents to seek a third term, and one of the first presidents to seek a non-consecutive term. The first president to ever seek a non-consecutive term, by the way, was Martin Van Buren, who ran in 1848 on the Free Soil Party after being president, or sorry, to seek a non-consecutive term. Yeah, not a third term. He'd only had one term. He wanted to come back in 1848 after his failed 1837 to 1841 bid. What's the history of Luxembourg? I don't know a huge amount about Luxembourg. I think it, like Belgium and the Netherlands, is kind of developed in that 19th century fray where there's these border states that are put up between France and Germany so that they aren't always attacking each other in wars. I don't know how and why Luxembourg is its own sovereign nation, but I think it's supposed to be this kind of buffer zone between Germany and France, and obviously shares, just like the Belgians and the Swiss, a huge amount of its culture of both societies. No, that's definitely true, Harsonet. Grover Cleveland, the president who was elected to non-consecutive terms, the only one until Trump, was basically guilty of assaulting a woman and her having his child and her not consenting to any of it. And Maria Helpin, it's a horrible story. A president who definitely would have gotten Me Too'd had he lived 130 years later, and definitely should have. I love music. Yes, if only Nixon had a better judgment of character. History tells us what a brilliant mind he was. Way underappreciated. Yeah, Nixon is an underrated U.S. president. He was a conservative who knew how to toe the line with moderate policies. He did his best to end Vietnam. I was talking about this earlier. But his big failure, obviously, was Watergate and his own hubris. If he had apologized for Watergate, he may have survived. But yeah. Nixon's an interesting guy. And today is the anniversary of when he went to China. And I talk about that on my daily history video. Do I have a Nixon background that I can use right now? Never mind. I'll do that later. So I don't know about Nixon being set up. I think Nixon did what a lot of politicians do. He just got caught of it. And the problem, glorious content with Nixon, wasn't just the Watergate break-in. It was the idea that the president is above the law and can do whatever he wants, even spying on his political opponents. In an election that Nixon won 62% of the popular vote in the biggest landslide in American history, probably. But remember, I am not a crook, right? Let me see. Do I have a picture? And I would say that Nixon is comparable to, of course, this man. I think that Trump and Nixon have a lot in common. They have both been maligned and have had criminal investigations, or have been seen as corrupt and worthy of criminal investigation. And the truth of the matter is, I think that Trump and Nixon are both guys who feel that they have been cheated by the system. Nixon thought he lost the 1960 election and that was stolen from him. Trump felt the same way in 2020. Both came back and won during times of huge upheaval. In 1968, Nixon won his presidential election, defeating the vice presidential candidate of a Democratic president who had stepped out of the race. In 2024, Donald Trump won his second term. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme a lot, by defeating the vice presidential candidate of a president who had stepped down. Lyndon Johnson stepped down because of Vietnam. Joe Biden stepped down probably because of his ineffectual foreign policy, just like Johnson, but also because of concerns about his age. And Trump won that election, pushing a law and order candidacy and a stabilization of America's foreign entanglements, and that's how Richard Nixon won the 1968 election too. Both of these men came back, made huge political comebacks. Nixon felt that after he lost the 1962 gubernatorial race in California, that he was done for. Trump seemed like he was done for when this happened, when he got convicted of the 34 felonies. the mugshot, all of that stuff.